Hey there, welcome to the latest hiker homily. I'm out here on what they call the Shima Loop, another levee road that's out here around the city, right where the city meets the countryside, the agriculture area. And this week, as you can see by the title of the video, I mean, it shouldn't be any surprise. If you clicked on this, you should know what you're getting into, right? Which means you either clicked on it because you think it's a topic that needs to be talked about and you want to hear about it, or you clicked on it just so you can say how it's not an issue and it's being pushed in your face even though you had a choice to click on it or not. It's kind of weird to say that it's being pushed at you. But there you go. That's kind of part of what I wanted to talk about, is the strange attitude of it, and that is racism on the trail. Now, I was going to put a question mark, racism on the trail, in the title, but it's kind of silly. There's no reason to put a question mark, because whether you are somebody who personally doesn't believe it exists, that doesn't make it true or a fact. It does exist. It happens. I personally know because I've faced it on the trail. Now, I need to remind some folks that if you have never faced it on the trail, that is not evidence in any way, shape, or form that it doesn't exist. More than likely, you are part of a certain demographic that doesn't face racism on the trail. Or you've been extremely lucky. One of the two. Because I can tell you the stories are all over the place of people who have faced racism on the trail. So it is out there. It does happen. And it should be talked about. It needs to be talked about. It's a subject that a lot of people, a lot of subcultures think that their little group is exempt. I've seen this in the modern pagan subcultures online. You see their groups and things like that. And they think that they're this amazing, enlightened group, love and light, until you meet some of the Odinist Asatru. And I'm not saying everyone who is Asatru is this way, but there's certain Odinist groups that are very racist. There are certain other groups that are just very exclusive when it comes to stuff like that. So, yeah, it's in that group too. There's, even when I was doing regular science fiction conventions, cosplay conventions, all that kind of stuff, I'm sorry, it's there. Because it's a thing that's just kind of permeates our society. Whether it's subtle or overt is usually the only distinction. But before I get into, the difference between subtle and overt, which, pretty much should be obvious, a real quick blurb on why the heck am I talking about this? Aside from the fact that it is a subject that needs to be talked about, and the simple statement of there is racism on the trails is enough to create absolute dumpster fires out of online hiking groups and things like that. Just making a statement, racism exists on the trails, sends some people into such a tizzy that they freak the F out and want the subject completely banned from every group, because that's not what I'm here for. Well, good for you, Your Majesty. Whoever said that a group that you joined, it's not even your group, has to make sure that every single subject in the group is specifically approved by you. It's got to be a subject that you want to hear about. But sorry, if it's a hiking group, that is a hiking topic because it is a thing. But that's part of the subtle racism that you see out there. But just that simple statement and the reaction to it by a lot of people, specifically mostly Caucasian people, proves that it's a topic that needs to be discussed, that the hiking community has an issue. If just saying there's racism on the trail freaks people out enough that they want to completely ban the topic and don't want to, they do the ears plugging or head up their head in the sand, let's put it that way, reaction, then obviously that's a topic that needs to be discussed because it's an issue. So but one of the other reasons I want to talk about it is because, like I've said, I have, get that sunshine right, experienced it on the trail. And I'm the type of person that if you listen to me, you listen to my videos and things like that, and especially in the wintertime when I haven't gotten a whole lot of sunshine, I kind of present as white. I can hide myself decently. In the summertime, I get brown. And that is because my ancestry is mostly Portuguese. And if you know anything about Portugal's history, that means there is some African Moor genes in there because they controlled the country for almost 500 years, interbred, all that kind of thing. A lot of the Portuguese, although they are Celtic and Iberian to start with, they get a lot of the Portuguese who are a dark brown color. It's because of that Moorish background. And that's just history. And I also have a little fraction of Native Hawaiian in me. I don't consider myself Native Hawaiian specifically because it was, my grandmother on my father's side was half Native Hawaiian, half Portuguese. So that makes me what, at the most a quarter? At the most. So yeah. That means that, at least in the eyes of some folks, apparently, because I have dark brown skin, especially when I was younger, I was outside all the time and I would tan a lot. I have dark brown skin, but I don't have what most people consider Latino or Hispanic features. You know what I mean? For lack of a better term, I really don't know what the term would be. But I do not look like your typical, whatever the heck that is, Mexican, South American, something like that. The Portuguese in me gives me a European feature, but I have dark skin. And it absolutely is amazing how throughout my life, outside of backpacking even, and the hiking community, people see non-Latino features and brown skin and assume Middle Eastern, Arab. Some really nice kids back in the 8th grade nicknamed me the Iranian because I was in 8th grade right around 1979-80 when we had the Iran crisis going on. So they were the bad guys for a while, the Iranians. And so they nicknamed me that, even though, as far as I know, I have no Iranian heritage in me whatsoever. I was brown, dark hair, but not Mexican. So in this little white town of Pleasanton, that meant I had to be an Arab, right? So Iranian, that was my nickname. It was so nice of them, right, to do that to a kid who was 13 years old. And that's been the problem I've run into on the trail. I'll give you one of the more overt racial things, just so you know where I'm coming from and why I'm talking about the subject in the first place. I was in Desolation Wilderness many years ago. When I was younger, I was much darker because I was getting sun all the time in the summertime especially. I was out backpacking all the time. I was in Desolation Wilderness a couple of decades ago. So this is how far back it goes. It just shows you that racism has been a thing for a long time. And it's not fixed today. It's not. I was going uphill, person coming at me, coming downhill. Now, if you know hiker etiquette, that means they're supposed to give way to me, right? Because the downhill people, they can stop. It's easier for them to get their momentum back going downhill than it would be for me. But when he gets about 30, 40 feet from me, he shouts, "Clear a path." He's an older guy. Me being a young guy and not really in the mood to argue because I was having a great time. I was in Desolation Wilderness backpacking. It's one of my favorite places. I just kind of semi-shake my head and move to the side. It's a thin trail in this particular area. There's not a cliff, but there's a drop-off on one side. For me, it was on the right side. And then it's kind of a slope on the left side. So I move towards the slope as best I can. That wasn't far enough for him, I guess, because as he goes by, he goes, "Make sure you give me some room, towelhead." Apparently assuming I was an Arab, and that's what he calls Arabs. And so he brushes by me, keeps walking. I really didn't say anything because at the time I was like, what in the world? Are you serious? But that's just one case that I've dealt with on the trail. So if you want to say racism doesn't exist on the trail, it does. I've experienced it more than one time. And you can talk about how, that's just one guy. No, you're right. That is one guy, and I'll fully admit the other 4 people I ran into that day were awesome. They were great folks. It was good to talk to them. A couple of them, we happened to be at the same place where we were resting together. Had a great conversation. Fantastic people. So 1 in 5 is a racist that I ran into that day. And apparently that means it's not a problem, we shouldn't talk about it. No, that's not how it works. If I were to make a video on there are injuries on the trail, if you answered, yeah, but they're very rare, so let's not talk about injuries on the trail, people would look at you cross-eyed, like, what the hell's wrong with you? Or some other kind of just minor thing. Hey, you know what? Sometimes bears are on the trail. Now, it's true you run into a bear very rarely, but it does happen. Nobody's bothered by those posts. Nobody's bothered by the posts of, hey, everybody be careful, you can get injured on the trail. Nobody's bothered by that. But if you say, hey, you guys, racism does exist on the trail, people go out of their freaking minds to tell you it's very rare, if it exists at all, and so it's not a hiking topic, we shouldn't talk about it. And that's what you get with borderline to subtle racism. Subtle racism is you looking at this title of this post and deciding, another one of those, I'm not even going to watch it. Well, you're not watching it to hear me say this, but that's subtle racism. It's an example for those of you who are watching. Or you try to minimize it in some way. Oh, it's only one guy on a trail. I'm not that way. Okay, no one is saying you are. Me making this video is not accusing every person out there of being racist on the trail who isn't a person of color or indigenous or black. But if you take it that way, just some person saying racism exists on the trail somehow means every white person is to blame. The issue is yours, not with my view or the video. I got to tell you that right now, because it exists on the trail. The way to get around that and to finally do it, well, let's put it this way, it's very well known. Step 1 of solving any problem, whether it's a math problem, a societal problem, any problem indeed, step number 1 is recognizing that there is a problem. If you're still in the step of, it's not a big deal, I've never seen it, therefore it doesn't exist, the problem's not going to get solved. You are not actively going around, using racist symbols, calling people racist names, being an overt racist, but you are still part of the racist problem. If your view is, since I've never seen it, it's not a problem, therefore let's not even discuss it. Because the problem is not going to get fixed until we recognize that there is a problem. And folks, there is a problem. I've seen it recently online in a lot of online groups when the topic gets brought up, how many people are so fragile that just the mention of it sends them into a tizzy where they have to post all kinds of things about how it's horrible that politics have been brought into the thing. That's the other way people minimize this situation, is they take what is essentially a human rights situation and they call it politics. And we shouldn't be talking about politics. Now, some of these same people are perfectly fine talking about their Second Amendment rights in groups. They're perfectly fine talking about that and other types of subjects that really are literally political. But all of a sudden, racism is a politics issue, therefore it shouldn't be on there. There's part of the problem. So yeah, it's just, things aren't going to get solved with that kind of thing. Or that's the other thing too, they're in these groups, they're so fragile that if they don't start arguing that it's politics and we should all just shut up, they actually leave the group, they run away. Especially if the group owners are like, hey, too bad, this is a topic that needs to be discussed. It is part of hiking for a decent amount of people who try to want to go out hiking. Because that's always the speech. There's absolutely nothing stopping people of color from enjoying the trail. No? How about old guys calling me towelhead? Does that make me want to go back out on the trail? Never knowing when I'm going to run into one of those a-holes again? Because guess what? I have. Now I'm a stubborn SOB, so I keep going out on the trail anyway. But there are plenty of people who I don't need this. Now, I'm not going to get into, in this video, some of the other things that do keep people of color from hiking, because they're social, they're economical. It's not just, well, it's just a lot of them just don't have an interest. It's not part of their culture. That's ridiculously black and white, if you excuse the term, simplification of the situation. And it's not. I know a lot of people who are of color, black, who are indigenous, who would love to go backpacking. They see some of the pictures I show backpacking, they want to do it. But they are afraid, and it's not fear of animals, it's not fear of any of that kind of stuff. It's fear of the other folks they'll run into. Because even here in the city, where they've got support and they can hopefully call for help, they have issues. Let alone if they're out in the middle of nowhere and assistance or help is a long distance away. It makes them nervous. So there is a social factor there. It is not just this, oh, it's just not part of their culture, so there's less of them. It's again, that's subtle racism. I'm not saying you're a freaking flag swastika waving KKK hood wearing racist, but you are perpetuating subtle racism, societal racism, with that ridiculous statement that it's either not a problem at all, or if it is, it's such a small problem. Well, it's not a small, maybe it's a small problem for you because you don't have to deal with it. Because that's, again, the thing. Hate to point fingers, but the majority of folks, and you get plenty of Caucasian people saying, no, you're absolutely right. This is something that needs to be talked about. And power to you. Thanks a lot for your support and help. But the vast majority of people who come up with the, oh, it's not that big of a deal, or I'll dismiss what you're saying because I've never seen it happen. All Caucasian. Oh, well, no kidding, huh? You've never seen it happen? You've never seen racism or been victim of racism on a trail? Caucasian person? Wow, what a shock. It's amazing. But that's the thing. It's actual real people. Humans with darker skin are saying, but it does happen. It's happened to me. It is real. And you just blow it off. That's part of the subtle societal racism that has to be fought. Because again, if you do not recognize that there is a problem, the problem is not going to get solved. So really, I just wanted to get that statement out there. Maybe in some other video, I'll talk about some of the other experiences I've had on the trail that dealt with racism. Both overt and subtle. But really for this one, that's just what I wanted to say. is if me making a video that basically states there is racism in the hiker community affronts you so badly, you're part of the problem, not the solution. If you want to be in denial so bad that it's just not that big of a deal, or it's not a deal at all, and you have every excuse under the sun for why you personally don't see racism as a problem, you're part of the problem, not the solution. And again, as I've said before, I'm not worried about my numbers. My ego's never been wrapped up in subscription numbers. So if I lose people on my subscribers thing, okay. I mean, that's fine. I would really rather have a small number of subscribers who actually gave a shit about the sport of hiking and the hiking community, that they want to see it bettered, than have large numbers and have a decent amount of them decide that racism just doesn't exist on the trail, or if it does, it's not a big deal because they don't have a problem with it. They don't suffer from it. They haven't experienced it. So why should it be talked about at all by the people who have? And especially if you're one of those ones, I'm just so tired of it though, it's everywhere, it's pushed in my face. No, it's not. Especially like videos like this. The title is not a mystery. It says exactly what this is going to be about. If you clicked on this video to watch it and then talk about how it was shoved in your face, I think you have some word problems that you don't understand. Some language issues there. So, racism in the hiking community, it is a thing. It happens. And it shouldn't. We need to fix it. People are taking steps to fix it. So that's hiker homily for this time. Fun, huh? So anyway, as usual, if you want to talk about situations that you've experienced out there and things like that, I'm not going to stop you. Just be careful and understand that I cannot guarantee every place this video is posted to comment on is a safe space for you to do so if you're a hiker of color or indigenous or black. On my own channel, the YouTube comments below, or Instagram and things like that, will I do my darndest to make sure the overt racists that just probably will not be able to control themselves from commenting are controlled and chucked out. Yeah, I will. But if this gets out on YouTube or on Facebook and stuff, can't make any guarantees. So be careful. But if you want to give examples, you go ahead and do that. But other than that, comments should be respectful. If you disagree with me, if you're just going to do it by, I've never experienced it. Even if you're trying to be nice about it. Oh, I think you're right. It's definitely a topic that should be talked about. I personally don't think it's a problem, but go ahead and talk about it. Oh, thank you so much for your permission to talk about this subject, even though you think it's not worthy of you. Yeah, you don't. No comments like that are needed. Just, I mean, if you really feel like you have to do that, then I'll deal with that however way I can edit it. But yeah, if you want to talk about it a little bit respectfully in the comments, go right ahead. As usual, at hikingforhealthca@gmail.com, or in the comments down below, Instagram, anywhere else I post it. And other than that, that's our wild and what shouldn't be controversial topic, but it is in the hiking community topic for this time: racism on the trail. It is a thing. It does happen. I'll see you later.